flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the Chelmsford Public Schools website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Guidelines. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of the meeting has notified the superintendent's office of their desire to speak and has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will also be read and made a part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. I don't believe we have any members of the press present. Welcome to tonight's meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Dennis King.
Yep. So as many of you are probably aware, a longtime teacher and coach in the Chelmsford Public Schools, Tom Cato, passed away recently. I was fortunate enough to have had Coach Cato as both a teacher and a football coach. I also got the chance to work with him as a member of the athletic department when I was starting my own coaching career. In all situations, at all times, Coach Cato not only carried himself with the utmost professionalism, but with a level of caring not typically found with people in his profession. It didn't matter who you were, whether you were the starting quarterback on the varsity football team or the team manager bringing water out to the players during practice, Coach Cato treated you with respect, and he never forgot who you were. You could come back to a game 10 years after graduation, and if he saw you, he would greet you by name, shake your hand, and ask you how things were going. Coach Cato's influence on people is such that players 40-plus years out of school would call him on a regular basis to check in on him. Coach Cato will be sorely missed by many in the Chelmsford community, and what I would like is just to ask if we could do a moment of silence, but before, I think Donna would also like to mention something.
Yes. And at this point, I'm going to ask John Moses to speak.
Yeah, for people in the community that don't know, Emily Dilworth passed away this weekend. And I've known Emily as a parent, and she was a recess aide. And one of the things about Emily that was always up front was her really unique style, the way she dressed, the way she stood out, her sense of humor. As I got to know her over quite some time, she was the person that I would, when I would go to like school events, we would sit off to the side and we would tell inappropriate jokes and have a great time because Emily was really great at that. Or we would go to, run into each other in our parents' circles, and she was always the person causing trouble with me. And she was just this really unique soul that people loved at the PTO, at the Biam. My son really loved her. And it's just, it's a real tragedy to lose somebody so young. So that would be the moment of silence for Emily.
So at this point, I'd like to take a moment of silence both for Coach Cato and for Emily Dilworth. Thank you, everybody. Okay, our first order of business tonight is to approve our minutes from March 12th.
Yep. I make a motion to approve the minutes for our meeting on March 12th, 2024.
Second.
All right, does anybody have any questions or concerns?
I just noticed a name that needs to be corrected toward, on page 4, I believe that should say Sam Poulton from the Neshoba Valley School Committee. Stated there be a debate, and his name is spelled wrong. It's right at the very end. the
How
last-
should it be spelled?
How do you spell his name?
P-O-U-L-T-O.
I thought it was Ian.
I guess I should have looked at spelling out before I.
I think Poulten.
Yeah.
Susan, I wanted to let you know that was our first error all year. Thanks for getting it on the
Thank you,
last.
thank you.
First error all year, not bad.
It was just a spelling, it wasn't just a spelling.
So we'll amend the motion to address the error. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed, abstain? Thank you. 5-0 in favor. Okay, next up, we'll hear from our Chelmsford High School representatives, and I, again, want to congratulate you on being chosen as a tennis team captain.
Thank you. Yeah, so on Saturday, March 2nd, the Chelmsford High School science team attended the Massachusetts State Science Olympiad, which is a nationwide competition hosted by the Wentworth Institute of Technology with 64 participating schools. Chelmsford placed 46th overall, and in the Science Quiz Bowl event, Anisha Dantam, Hasya Karthik, and Jaden Pacheco placed 8th. In the optics event, Nazareth Gazarian, Sohan Mayani placed third, and they received bronze medals. Congratulations to the Chelmsford High School science team.
The high school's 2 a cappella teams placed at ICHSA, the International Championship of High School A cappella. They made it to semifinals. The Thursdays got third and are eligible for the wild card round, and the Crescendos got first, so they're the Northeast champions, are moving on to finals. So congrats to both groups, and congrats to the senior elected class officers, class president Judah Stacy, vice Nate Hart, treasurer Pranav Aburi, and secretary Jessica Drusel.
Great. And I want to thank both of you. It's been a pleasure working with you. Very dedicated, very responsible, and excellent reports. So best of luck to you in the future.
Aw, thank you.
All right, do we have any good news?
Yep, piece of good news and a couple of announcements. So several of our elementary and middle school students performed in the Massachusetts Music Educators Association. I wrote it down because it's very long. All-State Treble Choir Festival. A little bit of a mouthful. So they were in Worcester this weekend, and they did a really nice job and had a good time. 2 pieces of information just to keep in mind is tomorrow night is the CPAC meeting at 7 p.m. That is a virtual meeting. If you would like a link, you can email Amy Reese at reesea@chelmsford.k12.ma.us. It's also on the CPAC website. And on Thursday night, we're holding the Parker Middle School informational session for the building project, and that's at the McCarthy Middle School at 7 p.m.
Great. Any other good news? All right, do we need to be registered for public comment tonight?
We don't.
Okay, so we'll move on to new business.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to jump right into the agenda. We have a bunch of different items tonight. We have a couple of presentations. The first we'll invite up Christine Clancy, our DPW Director. And this is to provide an update to the town's paving and sidewalk master plan. So Christine, thank you for coming, and I'll help you advance through the slides.
Thank you for having me tonight. I did provide a similar presentation last year. I think last year was a little more in-depth because last year we did, that was the first year we had the sidewalk assessment put together. Now, moving forward, we use both the pavement assessment plan and the sidewalk master plan to really create a conclusive or a combined paving and sidewalk update. So what I want to do is show you where we are. Now we're, knock on wood, out of the snow season and headed into paving. The first slide, thank you. So in 2012, we have our pavement management system. In 2021, that system was updated. This is really how we rate we have all the roads in town, we rate them. We also use this system to really plan for our outlook, looking at really a 3-year look ahead. What we do is we publish our annual paving list because conditions change over the year. It's not just the conditions of the roadway. We look at sometimes trying to combine projects in a certain area of town. Also, we look at utility needs. Does the gas company have to provide upgrades to the area, or is water main going in? So there's a lot of different considerations when putting together the pavement plan. And we use this considering different treatment options. We have preventative maintenance and all the way to structural rehabilitation. Also, the roadway system has different ratings for arterial roads versus the local roads. So we use this system and we update it annually as we update upgrade the roads. So the pavement condition index. This is really the rating that goes into a road. A rating of 0 is a road that's gravel, very bumpy. A rating of 100 is a newly paved road. So we use that as an indicator in what roads we have to treat and also what type of treatment should be considered. Next slide, please. So this just goes into some of the treatment systems, and this is a guideline. This is what we use. So going down to routine maintenance is when you start to consider maybe some crack sealing potentially. Then we get into preventative maintenance. This is where we do some more in-depth crack sealing. Just this last year, we did a micro sealing pilot, which that's essentially a driveway, similar to what you would put as a driveway sealant. We did that on roadway surfaces. And then continuing on that, then you get into more in-depth rehabilitation, mill and overlay, and then beyond that is really getting to the structurals in the sub-base of the road, and that's in roadway reclamation is what it's called. So here, we want to look at an average of our roads. Obviously, closer to 100 is the most desired. Last year, our number was 76.9, so that ranks in a fair condition, which is, I think, in comparing to the neighboring towns or in the community, that is a pretty good rating. We're in New England, we do get potholes annually. With all the paving, and I will get into that, all the paving we did last year, that number actually went up considerably. That's a pretty big jump to 78.3. So it really shows in, the paving, the money that we put into the paving program. And this isn't meant to go through each, but just to show you, this is the amount of paving that we did last year. What we do is we update the database to show the name, the segments of the road, and the treatment option, and the mile. So this is all in our database and updated. Next slide, please. So that amounts to 13.6 miles of paved last year. I think that might have been an unprecedented amount of paving that we put into the town. That also, 3 miles of that was Mass DOT. So North Road and Groton Road, that was completed by Mass DOT. So that was included in our pavement management update, or our index update. In terms of funds spent, $1.26 million of town funds spent. That includes capital, Chapter 90. Also, we had some free cash from last year that we used. And then we also have just under $57,000 in crack sealing that we used. Just some examples here. Pine Hill Road, that's a reclamation, so that's really not just the pavement needs to be rehabilitated, but the subbase needs to be rehabilitated. Then micro sealing, so that was on Sandra Drive. That was our pilot. And really, that's more of a preventative maintenance, but something a little bit beyond a crack sealing treatment. We were really happy how that came out. So when I go over this year's plan, we want to continue that program this year. And then Erlin Road, we also still do a lot of mill and overlay throughout town, and that is really where you're kind of taking off the top 2 inches and putting back that surface. So that's an example that we completed. Oh, sorry. Next slide. Perfect. Thank you. So 22, or then this paving year. So what we're still is a big year of $3.3 million, 9.7 miles. That cost is higher than last year just because as you get into some more intense rehabilitation, reclamation, the cost does go up. So based on the current construction costs, and we've already started to award some of those projects, starting construction really in the next couple weeks. So there will be notices going out. This is a list, and actually on the next page, it does continue. So the first column is the street. The next 2 columns are the, from a location to another location. We have the PCI index and the treatment. So it's mill and overlay, reclamation, and we are doing micro sealing. Just some highlights on here. Drum Hill, it is being paved. Dunstall Bull Road, and Parkhurst. Those are some, more arterial roads that we were looking at. Summer Street, that is one of our candidates that we are for micro sealing. So micro sealing is a treatment that is really, like I said, we just did the pilot. It is only recommended on a limit of vehicles per day. So, example, Drum Hill, we wouldn't recommend micro sealing. It's too many vehicles on the road. The limit of vehicles is really at Summer Street, so we want to try this out. We think it might be a good treatment for Summer Street, and we'll see how that goes. And just we're finalizing that contract, those contracts right now. So sidewalk. So for last year, for sidewalk, we completed 1,200 linear feet of sidewalk on Church Street, just over 1,200 linear feet of sidewalk on Main Street between the Town Line and School Street. Wilson Street, just outside town offices, essentially this street was replaced. Central Square, that's where we have the brick sidewalk. We did some miscellaneous repairs, 270 linear feet. And also, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but we also have to, our goal is to, throughout town, miscellaneous curb ramps replaced throughout town. So every year we try to target at least 20, and those are 20 outside the areas that we're working. So outside of any paving or sidewalk, we try to target some of those areas. So that was 0.6 miles replaced, for just over $466,000 spent. A lot of that, Chapter 90 of previous capital. Example here is 44 Central Square. The before condition, you can see the ponding at that curb ramp, or that pedestrian ramp, and then the after. So we address that ponding, and also we bring those ramps up to be ADA compliant. So for looking at next year, we are planning more sidewalk. Old Westwood Road, that is a new sidewalk segment. So in terms of new sidewalk segments, we try to pair that more with our paving program. So that is proposed in the sections of where we're missing sidewalk. Cushing Place in the center, that roadway is proposed for rehabilitation, so that will have a new brick section on one side. Parkhurst Street, there is a section missing as well. And then we have some streets here, Long Spur Road, Clydesdale Road, Windsor Street. That's really where we have this to coincide with the paving program, this repair of those or replacement of those sidewalks. This next one here is a really exciting road, Parkerville Road, and I know this was advocated a lot here by the school committee, members of the school committee, to have additional sidewalk or have new sidewalk put on Parkerville, and that was identified in previous. In looking at our sidewalk master plan as potentially, especially proximity to schools, and potentially, really missing connection from our network. So we are happy to report that we just received notice that the federal government we did receive that grant. We're still waiting for the funds to come in, but we're moving forward with design. All these other sidewalks here, those are going into our current sidewalk project that's actually hitting the streets. I think it's next week or the week after, or part of the paving program. So those will happen soon this spring, this summer. The Parkerville will lag behind that, but at least it will be, it's great to move forward with that. So it will be probably this fall, potentially next spring. I hope this fall. But that's 3,500 linear feet right there of sidewalk, new sidewalk, as part of that federal grant. The next couple of streets are coincide with last year's paving plan with all the rain we had. There was some work that was pushed off, so that being 2 streets. Again, miscellaneous curb ramps. We do target miscellaneous curb ramps throughout town. And then lastly, Tingsboro Road. Again, that was a project planned last year, but by Mass DOT, that is scheduled to start this spring. So in total, a lot more sidewalk this year, 2.5 miles proposed, $1.1 million in estimated construction. That doesn't include the Mass DOT cost, but that does include the earmark for the $350,000. And just to provide an overview, I did go in more in depth last year about the sidewalk master plan, but we used this database collaboratively with our pavement master plan. So we do have a very great inventory of our sidewalks. We have lengths, width, the condition, the type, material type, any structural issues as point issues. That's all in GIS. We also have a complete inventory of our curb ramps, the materials, and that's what we use as we plan our annual paving and sidewalk master plan. Next slide, please. So 46.5 total miles of sidewalk. So we have 756 curb ramps. So of the 756 curb ramps, 500 need some type of reconstruction, whether it be a condition-based or ADA compliance-based. So that is a large number, a backlog of $2.2 million. We're trying to target at least 20 if we can maybe another year look at maybe doing more than 20, but right now we're just trying to chip away at it. In terms of a backlog of overall sidewalk replacements, not new sidewalk, is $22 million. And that's separate from our paving program, which is probably 3 times that amount in terms of a backlog. So a significant backlog, and it's great that we're continuing to put more money in a paving sidewalk program, but there are a lot of needs. And this also shows a breakdown of our conditions of our sidewalks. So the good news is, I guess, the majority of it fall within good condition or, above fair. It's a very small amount that are in poor replaced condition. And I just want to highlight this is a snapshot from our master plan database in GIS. The conditions here, excellent, all the way to repair, are highlighted, but the purple are the missing segments. And this is what was presented last year. I think we spent more detail looking at each school location. 14.1 miles of sidewalk are proposed. $13 million is roughly that cost to add those sections. This would better connect the network throughout town. One priority being the schools, making better connections near schools. These highlighted areas, so Drum Hill or at Parkhurst, that is one connection that will be added. that was previously identified. Also here, Old Westford Road and the Parkerville. So in terms of proximity to school, the Old Westford and Byam are within those miles that were recommended. So it is good that we are able to, make those connections. We do have, like I said, a large backlog, so we're focusing on repairs, but with this year, we are able to make some good connections, and especially in proximity to schools. And that's it. So we'll be soon starting, focus on paving first. Sidewalk is going out to bid now, but we'll be starting, probably by May, I would say, on the sidewalks. Are there any questions?
I just have one quick question. So first of all, thank you for doing all that work. That's an incredible amount of work, and I don't think people realize like how important and how much backlog you have. It's just a lot to manage. One question I had on these sidewalk projects, do you do anything with safety as well as, I know you're doing the sidewalk piece, but are there gonna be, are there crosswalks or anything, or is that a different type of project? Like,
So we do look at intersections and existing crosswalks. I will say, I know that Raymond and Mill was an intersection or a proposal, and so we are able to get that into the contracts as well. I'm not sure which contract, I think it might fall in our Mill and overlay, so that is an improvement we're making. We don't look to add too many crosswalks, but more refresh crosswalks, but I guess that is a consideration that we would look at. I don't know if there's any particular requests, but that's what if there's anything that pops into mind or.
I think generally walkability requires, anytime a driver sees nothing but pavement for a long period, they think they own the pavement, right? And so breaking it up with things like crosswalks, like downtown, you have the brick piece, right? That automatically slows people down, and I just think that Parkerville Road, some of these big roads, these long straight points, I think it would benefit the communities to have more crosswalks. It's pain, and it's less expensive than somebody driving 60 miles an hour on.
Sure, yeah. We could, for Parkerville, that might be difficult. I guess we have to be careful about adding mid-block crosswalks, because that could, without doing like rapid flashing beacons, and then you also want to look at how many rapid flashing beacons you add. But it's something that I guess in terms of walkability, look, I do think for Parkerville, the sidewalk, and we want to make sure these sidewalks are 5 feet at least, so that we can clear and maintain them in the winter. So having that vertical barrier is helpful.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I just had two that I've received, questions about over the years. One is, and I think you've already addressed it, Mill Road at Raymond or across from Murphy Field. That's where that sidewalk ends. Is there any plan to extend it down Mill Road?
So the sidewalk, I have to go back at the paving plan. So we do have limited. There's 3 culverts, I think, in that section, extending it all the way down. So we're not proposing extension all the way down Mill Road. But right there at Raymond and Mill, we are proposing to do improvements right at that intersection. And then I have to go back and look at the plan if it's adding sidewalk, but it's really just making sure that it's safe for crossing. As far as adding sidewalk on Mill Road, I think wherever it is, it's just a small addition. Extending it all the way down Mill. I remember because I think it was originally proposed in a previous master plan, going back to 2008. When we looked at it, it's just the right-of-way width is a narrow road, winding road. The edge of road to some of the topography, that would make it very challenging, and also the culverts. So when you have those culverts, you're looking at building essentially a bridge over each of those culverts. And one sidewalk I didn't put on here, but it's worth mentioning too, is the Turnpike Road. I know that was requested, so and we do have funding for it. The funding, though, is it has to be spent by the end of next year. That is a permitting obstacle, just because we have to build a bridge at one of those locations right at River Meadow. So that isn't on this year's sidewalk list, but likely will be next year's sidewalk list. So I think it's a combination of those obstacles that prevent us from putting it on, and it's not in that 13.1 mile count right now.
Is that the same issue on Boston Road where the sidewalk ends at Aldersgate Church?
Yes, there is issues with a culvert there as well.
Okay, all right.
Can I ask this? Sounds, I live on Parkhurst Road. Is there a Parkhurst Street in town?
Parkhurst Street.
Oh, this is road.
Oh, it says Parkhurst Street. So
It's
it is,
roads.
sorry, it is Parkhurst Street. I apologize. So that's incorrect. So it's Parkhurst Street is what we're paving. this year.
Okay, so there are two. There's a Parkhurst Street and a Parkhurst Road.
No, well, this is over by Drum Hill,
Yes,
Parkhurst
road.
Road.
It's road.
Okay.
Okay,
I apologize.
that's all right. No, I just want to, it's selfish of
We
me.
would have been interested if there was another Parkhurst that we didn't know
Yeah,
about.
I'm
I
wondering.
apologize, and
There was, but this is good because it's right near the schools here. This is
we
great.
always refer to it as Parkhurst. I guess I apologize.
That's all
I do
right.
try to go through because that is a pet peeve of mine to call it Street, Road, Ave. So thank you. We'll make
It's
that
right
note.
here near the schools, so this is good.
Yes.
All good stuff.
All right, are there any further questions? All right, well, thank you very much for coming in tonight. It's always great to get an update. It is something that we do get a lot of questions about, so having this information is incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Second item on the agenda this evening, we're going to transition. I just need to see if our guests can hear. Karen, you can hear me okay? Perfect. I'm getting an A+ for technology tonight so far. So our second item that we're going to hear from, this is Karen Leduc, who works with New England School Development Council, NESDEC, is the report. This is a group that we've contracted with previously to help us with long-term student enrollment projections. This one is called the demographic study. Around 2015 to 16, NESDEC worked with us to do a kind of a full-blown projection of our district enrollment to help us as we're doing our forecasting for future construction projects or school enrollment needs and things along those lines. As part of the service, annually, they then take our October 1st numbers and update enrollments for us. But where we knew the impending discussion was going to be occurring with regard to the middle school construction process with MSBA, one of the elements that we have to do through the eligibility period is to have a discussion with the MSBA about kind of right-sizing our school if we're going to be building a new potential school in town. We wanted to have NESDEC come back and actually do the full-blown demographic study again, not just the annual update. So we contracted with NESDEC, and Karen was the individual that helped us with that. So Karen is actually going to review the findings tonight and then answer any questions you have. I think this is good information to just kind of set the one of the discussion points for exactly why we need additional space within the schools, and this potential new school building project will help us. So Karen, welcome. Just to let you know, you are projecting into the school committee room, and then Chelmsford Telemedia is the group that actually covers the meetings for us. So you will see me in a couple of different screens. One is because you're actually coming through my computer. The second one is the broadcast that the community is seeing. But welcome tonight. I gave you screen sharing rights, so you can actually share your screen and presentation. We very much look forward to hearing from you about your findings.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. NESDEC has been part of public schools for over 75 years. We have done enrollment projections, and I'm sharing my screen. I'm trying to...
Just right at the top of the slideshow. Yeah, perfect.
We've been around for over 75 years. I belong with a team. Christopher Malone is my consultant on this project, and the executive director is Dr. Dave DeRusi. And NESDEC has collaborated with districts for over 75 years with demographic studies, best educational use studies, professional development. But we've been asked to prepare a demographic study. And that entails looking at district and municipal records, data provided by the Chelmsford Public Schools, the Census Bureau, trends in birth rates, state birth data, the Warren Group, which reviews real estate transactions, housing and urban development, and the town planner, who is extremely helpful to us in this process, and local realtors. So first we'll go over trends pertaining to population and those factors that influence school enrollments, and then the updated projection reports, and then any expected student yield from any proposed residential construction. So the demographic information goes from large to small. So we look at the United States overall, and we know that births have been trending. Births are important because that's your future students for Chelmsford Public Schools. Then we'll look at New England, and Massachusetts as it relates to the New England states. And since 2022 to 2023, 31, we will see a 7.2% reduction in the PK-12 enrollments, which is similar to what you see in some of the surrounding communities, less than Connecticut and certainly less than Vermont. Chelmsford population is what is most important to you right now. And you can see the population has increased and remained stable. The past 3 years, it's been in the low 3,600s. And from 2000 to 2020, the population increased by 7.5%. That's unusual. A lot of places are declining. Chelmsford is stable. The median age of the population in Chelmsford, in comparison to Massachusetts, which is at 39.6 in the Middlesex County where you belong, 38.5. Chelmsford is median age is 43.3, and it's increased 11% over the past 20 years. The reason why we look at this is because it could be a factor in an aging population. We then look at the school-aged populations because that's what you're most interested in. So for school-aged populations, the ages 5 through 9 have stabilized to the 2012 levels, and I'll show you a chart in a second that exemplifies this. Ages 10 to 14 and 15 through 19 have had a slight decline. But over the past 20 years, the population under 18 has decreased slightly, while the population over 65 has increased almost the same amount. So a possible indicator, again, of an aging population. When you look at this chart, you can see just the school-age populations and then the other age breakouts. Important to note is the stabilization of the under 5. So for 2022, 5.2% of the population is under 5, and those are your future students. And we'll talk a lot about births in a minute, but that's important to see. And you can see how 65 has increased and under 18 has decreased, and those are your school-age populations. Another important factor to think about is the K-12 students per household. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is the top box, you see a declining percentage of students, K-12 students per household, and you also see a similar decline in Chelmsford. So over the past 30 years, the percentage of K-12 students per household has declined by 9%. So kindergarten enrollments rely on those live birth counts as they're reported to the U.S., the state. Chelmsford currently has experienced an increase in births, which could lead to an increase in kindergarten enrollments and enrollments going forward. Births increased by an average of 26 from the previous 10-year average of 330 to a projected average of 356. That's a class size. Actual and provisional births, we average those together between 334 and 381, an increase of the 2010 to 2020 span. And we estimate the births for the 5 years where we don't have any data based on the 5 years previous data. So we're looking at an estimated births stabilizing in the 354 to 362 range. And this chart shows you how the births have ebbed and flowed over the past years, but typically in the low 300s. The last 3 years, 356 for 2020, 381 for 2021, and 356 for 2022. And we take these 5 years in order to average to think about what the births will be. So trends in real estate are an important component of any demographic study. We know that there are a lot of mature citizens who are planning to downsize, giving up their 3 and 4 bedroom homes that will most likely be purchased by families with children. I've been at NASDAQ for 6 years, and prior to that, we've recognized how important the real estate market is to a community thinking about how their schools will enroll. And sometimes it's 4 or 5 times larger than the number of building permits, although you'll see Chelmsford has a lot going on. What the fluctuality of the real estate market is an important component to consider. So the Warren Group, between 2000 and 2007, before the last economic downturn, Chelmsford averaged 325 single-family homes, and the average median sale price was in the low 320s. From 2008 to 2012, the number of home sales dipped to 263, and an average median sales price dipped a little bit more. But from 2013 to 2023, Chelmsford saw 346 single-family units sold with a median sales price up to over $460,000. So in the last 15 years, the average median sales price has increased 43%, and home sales have increased by 31%. So people are moving to Chelmsford. So here are the home and condo sales, just the data that we use from the Warren Group. And then we interviewed several area realtors who supported the information from the Warren Group. The common selling price is between $550,000 and $750,000 for smaller single-family homes and $800,000 plus for larger single-family homes. The inventory is low, that boomers are downsizing and selling their 2 and 3 bedroom homes, and families with children are often buyers. And many millennials who grew up in Chelmsford are moving back, much of the time with children. And the easy access to routes 3 and 495, the recent revamped downtown area, and of course the schools are attractive to home buyers. So we then look at any new residential construction that's happening in Chelmsford. We look at approved projects currently under construction, approved projects not currently under construction, and projects in the approval pipeline. We will project student yield only for the approved projects currently under construction, but we will give you an insight into a potential student yield for approved projects not currently under construction or projects in the approval pipeline, because our experience tells us sometimes these are not built or are delayed significantly. So some factors to consider when we're reviewing the number of bedrooms per unit. We have so many community members who said, oh, that huge development just went up. But sometimes those huge developments only have, many 1 bedrooms and many 2 bedrooms. And they typically do not have a huge impact on student enrollment. It's the 3 bedroom units that we know will have an impact on student enrollment. The density of the area is important. If it's close to the highway, there are fewer children. Housing costs make a difference for people when they move with families. And to know, our past experience indicates that 70% of any potential student yield could be elementary age students, 20% middle school aged, and 10% high school age, because families move when their children are younger. So it was Mr. Belansky who did a great job of putting this information together for us. So these are approved projects currently under construction. Alexan, which he also shared a report that was prepared for Chelmsford that we looked at. There are 394 apartments total. Studio, 20 units, 1 bedroom, 161 units, 1 bedroom affordable, 3 units. Choice, 1 bedroom, 54 units. 2 bedrooms, there are 128 units, 2 bedroom affordable, 3 units. And 3 bedrooms, there are 15 units, 3 bedroom duplex, 10 units. And you can see the projected student yield, and I'll show you the comparison to what we project for Chelmsford with this added. Depending on the timeline of project completion, this is supposed to be done by spring of 2026. To K-4, we see a projected student yield of 23 to 26 students, grades 5 to 8, 9 to 10 students, and grades 9 to 12, 3 to 4 students. The next project, approved project currently under construction, was 9 Acton Road. There are 18 3-bedroom condominiums. Mary Avenue, a 2024 completion, is 10 3-bedroom duplexes. Jackson Road, 2024 completion, 12 3-bedroom units. 73 Dalton Road, which is completed, is 5 apartments, 1 1-bedroom and 4 2-bedroom. And this projected student yield, the impact to the enrollment over 3 years, again, dependent on the timeline of the completion of the project. K-4, 16 to 21 students, grades 5 to 8, 7 to 8 students, and grades 9 through 12, 2 to 3 students. Now, these are approved projects not under construction. 3 Meeting House, which is 8 1-bedroom apartments, and projects in the approval pipeline. 39 North Road, there are 12 apartments, 7 2-bedroom, 5 3-bedroom. In 47 Boston roads, 16 apartments, 12 two-bedroom, 4 three-bedroom. And remember, we calculate potential student yield because these are currently not under construction and have not been approved or permitted. And this will have minimal impact to enrollment. So the potential student yield to grades K to 4 is 5 to 6 students, grades 5 to 8, 1 to 2 students, and grades 9 through 12, 1 student. So there are other local regional factors that we asked Mr. Belansky to speak about, and he felt as though the MBTA zoning not expected to result in any shorter intermediate instruction. He sees a continued trend in 2 families or duplexes. And while the demand continues for multifamily, existing restriction to sewer connections for multifamily housing remains. So here are the residential building permits as permitted, as reported to the Housing and Urban Development, and may not necessarily reflect all that I just spoke about, or you might know because there's a delay in reporting, but we think it's important because you can look at past trends here. And Chelmsford, I took this right from your website because it was so well spoken about. It's a scenic community. It has trails, beaches, pathways, a small town feel. The history's alive, embraced, and proudly preserved. Founded in 1655, it's an enthusiastic sense of volunteerism engagement exhibited through our residents and local business. It's an important, I think it attracts families to come to Chelmsford. So the bedrooms per household, we've just added this because I think it's important to think about the potential. So you can see that 4 bedrooms and 5 bedrooms, adds up to about 68% of the homes in Chelmsford are 3 to 5 bedrooms, which could house families with children. So there's a potential if those mature citizens start to downsize. And also important to note is the number of owner-occupied units. And so you can see here the percentage of owner-occupied units, I'll just show you in the 2022, is 82%, been consistent over all of these years. Renter-occupied, consistent, and it's the percentage of vacant is really or for seasonal use is pretty small. So these are an important characteristic to think about for Chelmsford because it indicates the stability in the housing market. So now we'll go into the enrollment projections. These are just the enrollment projections that Superintendent Lang had mentioned at the beginning that we send to the district, and then I'll show you that comparison to if you do have all of those students who come because of the new residential construction. Our process is a modified cohort component or survival technique. We look at births as they relate to kindergarten enrollments. We look at student migration in and out. We look at the review of the stability of grades 1 through 8. So we'll look at grades 1 through 8 and track how many of those students transition to grades 1 through 7, and how many of those transition to grades 2 through 8, and then the single family. So we calculate percentages based on the enrollment data and look at the increase or decrease in enrollment between any 2 grades, and we look at the ratio between each pair of grades or years in the school. After we take all of that into account, we choose a ratio based on the key factors and the reliability of the projections, assuming the validity of the data at the starting point. And the districts have always been very good at sending accurate data based on October 1 reports. So to know, the first 3 to 4 years of an enrollment projection are the most reliable, and projections 6 to 10 years out may serve as a guide for future enrollments and for planning purposes, because we know that things can change. So this is just the historical enrollment, and over the past 10 years, if you look here, K-12 enrollment has declined slightly by 1.4%. Of note, over the past 3 years, K-12 has increased from 4,817 students to 4,930 students, averaging a 1.2% increase. So even though it's declined by 1.4, it's increasing. And you can see here, this chart shows you the grade spans of the Chelmsford schools, and up here is the historical data by grade span. This bar chart also shows you the stability of the past 10 years. And then to look forward. I mentioned the births because here you'll see the birth year, the births, and then the enrollments as it goes forward. So in 2018, there were 343 births, but you enrolled 375 kindergartners. What we know, and I'll show you this in another chart, is that Chelmsford enrolls more kindergartners than there are births, which tells us students are moving in. So over the next 3 years, K-12 enrollments are projected to increase by 236 students, or 4.7%. By grade span, K-4 enrollments are projected to increase by 117. Grades 5 to 6 over the next 3 years are projected to increase by 48. Grades 7 to 8 are projected to increase by 36 students, and grades 9 through 12 are projected to increase by 35 students as students move through the grades. And here's a chart to show that increased enrollment. And also a line graph. And this just shows you the historical and projected enrollments and grade combinations. And also we enumerated what the population is for each of those grade spans. Here's the birth to kindergarten enrollment. It's a positive indicator of overall growth. So from 2020 to 21 school year, you've enrolled the same or more kindergartners than there were births, which indicates move-ins. Here it was the same, here it was below. So things have increased for the number of kindergartners, people moving in with the kindergarten students. So we look at the stability of grades 1 through 7. Over the past 8 years, Chelmsford has seen move-ins from grades 1 to 7 who transition to grades 2 to 8, averaging about 32 students per year, which indicates an in-migration of families with children moving to Chelmsford. And over the past 3 years, Chelmsford has increased grades 1 to 8 enrollments by a range of 1 to 3% over the previous year's enrollment, also suggesting an in-migration of students. So an example, in the school year 22-23, there were 370 grade 3 students who transitioned to 381 grade 4 students the subsequent year, an increase of 2.9. So this in-migration of students to Chelmsford is yet another indicator of families moving to Chelmsford with school-aged children. We look at some additional data that we keep, the number of non-public schools that students attend and choiced in, choiced out. So just to summarize the demographic analysis before I show you the differences in the potential projected student enrollments. Over the next, again, the K-12 enrollment will increase over the next 3 years by 236 students. Births are increasing. There's an in-migration of students in grades 1 to 7 transitioning to 2 to 8. The population has decreased slightly, and the over 65 population has increased. Your realtors tell us there's a robust real estate market, which indicates that Chelmsford is a viable community for new residents. And new residential construction currently under construction will have an impact on enrollments. And approved projects not currently under construction and those projects in the approval pipeline will have an impact on student enrollment. So we do an enrollment forecast different from the last project that we did for Chelmsford. We feel this is clearer. So we look at the public school enrollment of the past 10 years, and we look at that student yield considering the potential number of school-aged children, as I said. And if you look here, this chart shows the current enrollment projection as it relates to the enrollment forecast. So here's the projection for 24-25, and only reflects the approved projects currently under construction. We assign the student yield to grade level spans without certainty of the actual age of the potential students. So here we're saying K-4 for 24-25, we are projecting 1,976, and the forecast is 1,989. For 25-26, 1,988 to 2001, and so on. So this is arbitrarily taking the totals of the projected enrollments from those projects that I mentioned and applying it over 3 years to what we saw as our projections, arbitrary. It could be that some of the students that we see here in this 13 student increase, only 7 could enroll, and the other 6 could be here. We don't know, but it's just a way for districts to look at what are we thinking and what might happen. And we thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this work on a demographic study with you, and certainly it could engage in any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
When I read through this, you consider only the build out in real estate, the households that'll have 3 bedrooms, is that right? When you do these projections?
For the enrollment forecast,
Yes.
it's anything 3 bedrooms or more.
Okay, so is there any impact that we've seen over the last few years in the increase in number of single-parent households where those 2 bedrooms really do have an impact on communities more than in past years?
Actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be a single parent, it could be a single child home.
Right.
And over the past 2 years, the research that we have done, we have not seen an increase in the number of
Okay.
families with children in 2-bedroom homes.
Okay,
We continue to monitor.
thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm just, and I probably can't answer it, but that election, I assume, is West Campus on page 23, that's what it's called now? Because that's the biggest one that's in the books, okay?
Yes, it's the UMass Lowell West
Okay.
Campus.
Yeah.
I had a question on page 36. When we were talking about the grades 9 to 12 projected enrollment by 35 students, this is actually probably more for Dr. Lang. That does not include our school choice students, correct?
I don't have page 36 up in front of me. However, and Karen, please correct me if I'm wrong, any of the school choice students that we currently have enrolled in the district would be included in this number, but not, say, new to be enrolled.
Okay, all right, so they wouldn't be included in our projected numbers, okay.
Correct, only kids that are physically here.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other question I had, that there's, one category that I noticed that wasn't included, but that has become a concern, I think, not only for Chelmsford, but many cities and towns in Massachusetts, is how to calculate the increase in enrollment due to homeless families. So that's kind of a moving number. Is that fair to say, Jay?
Yes, and Karen, you can certainly jump in as well. Homeless families who are included in our numbers, our October 1 numbers, would be included in the projections and I assume the forecast. If we were to receive additional homeless families, they would not be included because they wouldn't be currently being educated here, so they wouldn't be included in the projections. But Karen, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right. And we're assuming in the projections that those homeless families remain residents in Chelmsford.
Okay, great.
So I would take to that, and I don't know off the top of my head the exact number, but let's just say we had 50 homeless students in the district currently included in our numbers. If we maintained about that 50, whether they were the same 50 or a different 50, that would be included in the projection. But if all of a sudden we went up to 100, there'd be an extra 50 students that wouldn't be. So we'd be over even that.
All right, are there any other questions?
Just bottom line, it appears that our enrollment's going up, and particularly at the K to 4 level. Is it safe to say that?
Karen?
Yes, so when we do, are you referring to the new residential construction?
No, I'm just talking overall big picture. It seems like over the next 3 to 5 years, our overall school enrollment is going to go up a decent amount, and particularly at the K to 4 level.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Yeah. The big takeaway for me, we've seen this because our numbers have been increasing each year. So we certainly have seen an increase. Even as Karen and Nesdek indicated, the closer years 1 to 3, 1 to 4, are more accurate. And I think as you get into years, 4, 5, 6, up to 10, That's why we do the annual reports, just to make sure that we're actually staying on top of these numbers. But, I believe it was 236 students, over the next 3 years in particular, we're going to be added. And again, we've actually seen that over the last 2. And just based on the numbers, the majority are coming in at the elementary grade levels, and they'll be obviously filtering up to middle school. So that's where we see our biggest number of students over the next at least 3 years. But this, I am also looking at the projection at least 10 years out, because that does come into play when we're talking about the potential new school building project and the need to find not only short-term but longer-term space in our buildings for the population.
I also just want to comment, looking out 10 years, there's all this talk about the new development, but we can't overlook what they found, that the population is aging. If I look at my street alone in Chelmsford, from one corner to another, say about 30 houses, at least 3/4 of them are now occupied by people who are already retired, soon to retire, and their children have been out of Chelmsford schools for a long time. These are houses that are going to be sold within the next 10 years, and most likely, because they're all 3, 4, and 5 bedroom houses, families are going to be moving into them. So even without this new enrollment, we're going to have quite a few people selling their houses to new families, and we have to be prepared.
Yeah, and the thing that's going to be happening concurrently is our buildings will continue to age and, need repairs and things like that. So, I think this is very helpful in terms of, putting together a plan for how it is that we need to move forward as a district.
Yeah, no, and I definitely want to thank Karen and the team at NASDAQ for doing this work. As she mentioned, Evan Belansky, the town planner, provided all the information on the current developments that are underway, as well as even the projections. That was super helpful to us as we were looking at this. And 3 or 4 local realtors also just shared their experiences with the housing market. And again, I think this is really a good news story for Chelmsford. It's a desirable community to live in general. I do think people are attracted to the schools and a safe community and public safety and where the town is expending its funds. It's geographically in a great location where you've got 495 and Route 3. There's just a lot of attraction to the town, and I think that definitely is going to keep us, thriving. And to Susan's point, we are starting to see, because the, I believe you call it the mature population, as a percent of the town is higher than in the area. So you are going to start to see some of those homes turn over. And again, 3 and 4 family homes, when they do turn over, lead to more kids in the school system. So not only the Axion or whatever that development at West Campus is called, but just the turnover of our current stock is going to increase student population. So, Karen, thank you very much for sharing that with us tonight and being able to present and give us that data. It's going to be important as we're beginning the discussions in the community about potential new school building projects, and having that data when we do talk to the MSBA around our enrollments and what we should be actually planning for in the future, not only middle school wise, but elementary school wise as well. So I personally want to thank you and your team and all the folks from the town that helped provide data to this so that it could all be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much for allowing us to collaborate with you. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, I just need 1 minute to,
You're getting to be a Zoom expert now.
I have to say, it went incredibly smoothly tonight. We did do a little practice before the meeting, but I just have to make sure I'm out of this.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Do you need to take a break?
No, I'm just trying to find my thing. Linda, how? I know, I did so good getting it to work. How do I get out of
I
this?
cursed him.
I saw him. He got all nervous. His hands got sweaty.
Yeah, great. We'll stand up for that.
Yeah,
So why don't you do kindergarten while we do
well,
this?
because I can't see my agenda because I've hidden it now.
Here, it's right here.
Thank you. All right, Linda will help.
Can I come out for
Yep.
town meeting?
And I don't think it's funny. I did very good getting that first thing up. It was almost seamless. Okay, so moving on.
Ripped.
What's that?
Said, and then the seam ripped.
Well, listen, at least it wasn't, a broadcast pod. So I'm still pretty happy with myself tonight. Moving on with the agenda, under new business, item number 3 tonight is just an update for you, or a reminder for our families who might be watching. We held kindergarten registration previously this winter, and we always have a spring registration. So Joanna, do you want to just kind of share the dates for that and talk a little bit about that's upcoming? It's really important to us that we reach out to families, and if you have someone in the neighborhood, or if you participate in a club or an activity where someone, it's like their first child coming to the school system, kind of share with them that we do have the enrollment, because we'd love to go through the process, get the child enrolled, do all the screening, so that it just goes smoothly for them when they come to school in September. So we do have the April dates coming up, and I'll turn that over to Joanna.
Thank you. So the next kindergarten registration date is April 25th. From 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. here at the central office. And families can reach out, and you get a little 15-minute appointment. And the school clerks come here too, again, also with our central registrar, and register their child for kindergarten. And like the superintendent said, we encourage you to please come at this big date, or you can come anytime as a walk-in. And please don't wait till August. We just do so much better if the enrollments come sooner. It also helps us plan for the space. Do we have enough teachers? What our class size is going to be? So if you're out there, please register April 25th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 15-minute appointments. Thank you.
Great. Next item on the agenda this evening, Dr. Hirsch is going to provide just an update on the Student Opportunity Act submission. We had to submit a Student Opportunity Act 3 years ago when the new legislation went into effect, and it's time to do an update. So I'll turn that over to Linda.
Thank you. So yes, in your packets, you have a draft copy that needs to be voted on in order for it to be reviewed by the commissioner. And like Dr. Lang said, back in 2019, the Student Opportunity Act came into play, and we had submitted one back in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And that was the funding that was given to the state to help with some of the greatest needs that we have. You'll probably remember them as the ESSER grants. So we're still on ESSER 3 right now. And this allowed us to basically come up with some strategies, and back then we called them commitments. So you had a 5-page document that you had voted on that was then submitted to the state to be approved for the district to be using those funds. So this act is still in place, and so now is the 2024 Act. And we are to then again to submit another 3-year plan. The good thing about these is that they've actually been in the same alignment as our strategic plan. So we just took the work that we were doing from our strategic planning, shifted it over in the DESE format. So the format that you see tonight with the plan in front of you is what actually goes into the Department of Education. They have what they call the GEMS program, which is really where our grants go into, and we'll be submitting that way. So we pulled the actual plan itself to put the information in. So it has 5 parts to it. Obviously, the overview of what your plan looks like, the data analysis that was done by the district using the heat maps that that DESE put together for us to look for the biggest disparities. These are kind of these persistent disparities that we're seeing for our students, which we saw in the DM group when we worked together in our subgroups. And then obviously our agreement to use MCAS data, I don't know how we would unagree to that, but we will agree to use MCAS data to monitor our students as well as our internal benchmarks. What we do as a district for family engagement, so all of our different committees that are out there. And then we have 2 focus areas for DESE for the evidence-based programs. One of them is to continue to support curriculum implementation. We did a big push for our literacy, as you know, back for the past 4 years. We haven't forgotten about literacy, it's still happening, but now we're moving forward into the implementation of math, so we'd like to continue with the funding around that. And then obviously the second focus area is students with disabilities. You will see that we have some disparities with some of our L students as well. Some of those students may be students with disabilities or economically disadvantaged students as well. So when we dig deeper into the data, we know who the students are. It's important to notice that these numbers that you see are not in addition to our budget. They're part of our current operating budget. So the FY25 budget that you're looking at, it's bits and pieces of it. We're not looking for additional funding for it. The numbers look very large because instead of just saying what it would be in 1 year, you had to multiply it by 3 years. So that is a 3-year number that you're seeing based on what's currently in our budgets, not in addition to. So questions that you might have about this plan that we have, and it does need to be voted on so that we can update it. So if there's changes that we have to make, we'd have to make them prior to when it's due.
So I know this was put in place to get extra money to help schools meet the needs of students. How much money are we getting from Student Opportunity Act?
We are not getting money for the Student Opportunity Act. We're getting our Chapter 70's money plus the additional bump, which was how much for Chelmsford?
Yeah, so this ended up really happening for us. We ended up getting, there were a lot of districts in the state that got the minimum $30 per student. For us, it ended up being $52 per student. So the Student Opportunity Act, again, when the legislation changed to kind of tweak the Chapter 70 formula, it did actually, we got a decent increase last year, which we hadn't traditionally received. We had always been like one of the minimum aid districts. I do think we got, instead of the 30, the 52, because our enrollment did go up, so there was some type of an adjustment for that. But it didn't quite pan out for us the way long-term that we thought it was going to. Quite honestly, it's a little frustrating. I'm not the only person that feels that way, where we have the strategic plan, and that's our document that guides our work. Districts that are basically getting, say, the minimum aid or whatnot, are not really happy with the fact that we have to now kind of put our whole plan into this DESI document and put it through for approval, because we're not getting the funding that was promised through the Student Opportunity Act. But it is something we still have to go through and do. But for us, we had the plan. We're following the plan, implementing it. As Linda indicated, we're just kind of tweaking it and putting it into their format that all districts are responding to. So I guess you could say for us, it was about $263,000 is what our Chapter 70 increase for this coming year was. That's under the Student Opportunity Act, what the tweak was, not the millions that we were hoping for.
Lame. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So just a question, this is a 3-year plan. We're not like stuck with this plan. In other words, one of the things that concerns me about the plan, and one of the things that has been concerning me about our strategic plan overall, is that we're focusing a lot on the math, but we're not focusing a lot on the literacy thing. And I brought this up already, and I think that's something we have to look forward in this coming year, is revisit the literacy part of it, especially in the early years, and make sure that what we've got is really going to get good results for us. That's not addressed here at all, and that would be over the next 2 or 3 years, because we've got to plan out the money and everything else for it. So what does this mean for us with this plan?
Well, if you look at the different pieces in there for like the investment, it's not just curriculum, because we have the materials are here. You're seeing the difference of like the addition of staff, right? So special ed staff, so they're gonna
Right.
address, nobody's not addressing ELA, it's just our focus is on some of those math areas. So those special ed teachers teach math and ELA, an L teacher, right? We do have the specialists for mathematics that are going in there, but if you look at a lot of the things that we pulled to help support with these evidence-based practices, a lot of it is staffing and then using our online platforms that we use for both ELA and math. So ELA hasn't gone away, it's just we know that we have to focus a little bit more on math because they have a brand new math program, and what does that look like for our students? So there's nothing in here about purchasing new curriculum products, because we
Right.
have them. So it's not like you're not precluding yourself from getting new products down the road during an adoption process.
And if I can just add, like, when it comes to, say, like, the literacy piece, like, we have the staff itself, like, we've had reading teachers in the buildings, we haven't had the math specialists in the buildings. So regardless of what the reading teachers are kind of implementing as a curriculum, they're already there. What we're doing is adding in math as the focus, and that was really because our focus prior to the math initiative had been on ELA. So we're trying to get the math, kind of up to par. That was the focus. The report, we do have to provide, kind of annual updates on the report. And I would honestly defer back to our strategic plan, because I think that's really kind of our guiding document to talk about where we're putting our resources. It aligns to our funding. And that is an annual document that we look into, and we need to prioritize what's going to be our focus area in those cases. And for us, going into next year, and when it comes to the academic focus, it was mathematics. And when we looked at special education in particular, it was really trying to address and target that achievement gap for those students. And that is in the budget document where we included our new funding. So this really does, kind of align to that. But it will always be part of the broader conversation about what we do with the planning going forward. I just don't think we want to have two separate plans. We have the strategic plan that's guiding our work. We're incorporating that into the template that DESI's requiring because all districts are required to do that. Believe it or not, some districts don't have a strategic plan. They're just kind of working, but we have that, and we don't want to have two different competing things going on. So that's why we took this tact.
Okay. Doesn't preclude us from over this next coming year, looking at that and fine tuning it or doing anything else and then amending this every year.
I say what we would be doing, no, and again, it's not that I'm not concerned with this document, but we're not really getting the funding to
Right.
support us going through the hoops to do this Student Opportunity Act. I'm more concerned about our strategic plan and making sure that we're making decisions that make sense for our district. And we're actually backing up those decisions with our funding and our budget, and that is all in alignment. And this is almost more of a compliance tool. We're going to comply and we're going to insert the information. But if we were to make some type of a tweak, or, we do have to talk about like what our targets and focus area for next year is going to be, even as we complete some of the tasks for this year. So there's going to have to be a shift in our strategic plan in certain areas for next year. That work is always going to be updated annually.
You'll notice the metrics in here are like the broad metrics, that we're going to increase the proficiency in SBG for the students. We're not going to, it's not saying we have to do it by this amount. That's the work that we would change in the strategic plan. They're not looking for exact numbers in this. They just want to know that we have a metric to be able to, review what we've been doing.
So I have a kind of similar question to that. I have no problem with this document. I understand that this is what DESI requires for this piece, and it describes a 3-year plan, and I certainly see the overlap with our strategic plan, but I've been so busy focusing on this year's strategic plan, not having been involved in the development of it. So this year, the focus was very much on math in the strategic plan. Is that going to just carry forward with math, like say next year? Or is that still up in the air what the academic portion of that will be for next year?
No, I mean, the academic, so there's the 5 different areas, right? Under academics, mathematics was a key component of the 5-year initiative because it was a 5-year strategic plan. So the first year, we actually had to do the sample programs. We had to identify which we were going to adopt. Year 2, we actually, adopted it. We provided the professional development training, and then you move into like the implementation phase. So the math work is going to continue, but as now you don't kind of have the ramp up to getting the program in place and getting it up to speed, we are going to look to see what additionally we need to be focused on in years 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to be doing that in all the areas. So there'll be, like this year in the, and I know you'll be getting a report on it, but in the special ed group, we worked a lot around the roles and responsibilities of paras and how to best help instruction. As that gets implemented, we're then going to have another focus area for special education next year.
Yeah.
As we're rolling that out. So, no, it's a multi-tiered, multi-year approach. And there are going to be different focus areas in each of the 5 areas over the course of the 5 years.
But the intention of the academic piece was really, at least in this short term, to see, now that the new math program's been implemented, to see how effective it is to close those gaps. So I'd imagine we're still going to look at that.
It's the whole progress monitoring piece and actually seeing about everything that we put into place, are we really
To
getting the
support
results?
that new program, is it all working the way we want?
Right.
Yeah, but I do know we have to look at our ELA things, because there's just some things I think need reviewing too.
But, and Linda can certainly speak to this, but even on ELA, I know the focus was mathematics, but we also have ELA and literacy goals, and we have different benchmarks, so it's not that we're forgetting about it.
Yeah.
It's just we had spent a lot of time with the ramp-up of that, and math was the focus, but we still had the reading goals, and there's still obviously a big
Yeah,
focus.
and
in the
obviously we
district.
can't drop the math one because
Correct.
we didn't close the gap. I understand that, we're
For grade
closing the
8,
gap.
For grade 8, so yeah, if you
Right.
look at the metrics that are in there, the metrics have the ELA and the math. So the ELA hasn't been forgotten, but this year's action steps and previous years, and we'll need a 3rd year because you don't just do it in 1 year and it's done. You're going to have to focus on the math and then make your adjustments as that year goes through.
Okay.
Any other questions? I just wanted to kind of back things back out to more of a macro type of perspective. So the first question I have is, I know that we have these disparities, but we also know that one of the things that has happened since COVID is attendance has dropped off. Are we looking at any of the root causes, like as attendance may be one of the issues that may be causing some of these, areas of need, like in mathematics and things like that?
Yeah, if you look at both the heat map and even just our benchmarks, our chronic absenteeism is not one of our major areas.
Okay.
Right? So we have pockets of it here and there for certain students, maybe a grade level here, but it's not enough to put a full group in there. I do know that Amy's group has been working with the high school to talk a little bit about attendance, like how do you increase it more? But if in the eyes of DESE or even our benchmarks, our dashboards, we don't show that this is a larger issue in Chelmsford. Our students are coming to school. We're in the green across the board.
All right.
And can I just, but even like individually, can you just speak to like, if there were particular pockets or even particular students, that is getting flagged in Panorama?
Yes, and Panorama, and that is what they do. They put together like an intervention plan on how they're going to work either with the family, the students, depending on the age group, on getting the students to come to school more often.
Okay. And then the Student Opportunity Act is focusing on these disparities, okay? But one of the other things that's kind of become a hot topic in the state is just the cost of providing an education to any student. And so, like, at what point is, it's getting more and more expensive to educate any student, okay? And especially students who need extra help. Is there anything, in the legislature or on the drawing board for being able to address this issue? We were promised funding. We didn't get it. And I don't understand, I guess, this is where my frustration is going to leak out. I don't understand how they can expect us to be able to maintain or catch up if we're not getting the money that we need. Is there anything out there?
I share your concerns. I think what the legislature would say is that their charge was basically, and, the different groups are pushing them to continue to fund and live up to the commitment to fund the Student Opportunity Act for, I forget if it was 6 or 7 years, but whatever that implementation was, and we're in year 4.
Right.
So through the Chapter 70 formula and funding, the Student Opportunity Act is fully funded for fiscal year '25, the coming year.
Yeah.
And there's at least 2 or 3 years after that where they're going to need to fully fund it. The communities that really made out with the Student Opportunity Act are more of your urban centers.
It's always no.
Right, but they were the groups that really, the gateway cities and things like that, are the ones that really benefited. I'd love to tell you, Donna, that, we're going to receive more funding. I think we did last year was we do a deeper dive into the formula, largely because of the inflation rate being so high. It helped most communities. I mean, like Drake saw, just as another like town, but I mean, Drake has been struggling financially as well. They saw a big increase last year in Chapter 70, where we normally would get $150,000 to $300,000, we got close to $2 million. So we did see that. I really thought and hoped that that was going to continue, but where the Chapter 70 formula, even with the Student Opportunity Act, kind of tweaks to it, was so tied to the inflation rate that's just unfortunately not going to help us. So I don't want to tell you next year all of a sudden we're going to go back to 2 million. I think unless something significant changed formula-wise. There has been a push on with the Superintendent's Association, I know the School Committee Association, to take a look at that inflation factor, because in the statute, it's capped at like 4.5%. And prior to last year, we were seeing like 2 or 3 years in a row where inflation was much higher than that. What would have happened under the old Chapter 70 formula is, even though it was capped at 4.5%, let's for argument's sake say that particular year it was 6.5%. That extra 2% would be added to the following years as a catch-up, because obviously when things go up in cost, they don't just come down, because inflation, they just might increase at a lower rate. But the Student Opportunity Act formula basically didn't account for that, or didn't keep that little tweak in there. And that has been something that the Superintendent Association, Association of School Committees has been kind of pushing with the legislature to go back in and make some type of a correction to the formula, where at least that kind of longer term of the longitudinal inflation will get incorporated back in. Like, that would have helped us. So if inflation, had, and I believe it was below 1%, Joe, you can correct me, but it was below 1%. But if it ended up being 3 or 4%, we may have seen, because again, we do have the student enrollment increase, a more significant and substantial Chapter 70 number. But absent that, no, I don't want to tell you something's going to change. I don't see it changing.
My concern is we're already below the state average in per pupil spending, right? And I think we do a great job. My concern is that eventually it's going to catch up with us, right? That just, things get more and more expensive. And that, I worry about maintaining,
Right.
No,
we are below state average as far as the average per pupil spending. When you look at our peer communities or our comparable communities, we're right in the middle. There's certainly some that spend more, there's certainly some that spend less. We're going to be in that mid-range because those communities also didn't benefit from
Right.
the Student Opportunity Act.
Now, the only thing that, this is my last thing on Chapter 70 is, if I'm not mistaken, they're not due for a review for 10 years from when it was implemented.
I believe a full review.
Full review, yes.
So I concur with you. I agree. However, what's been talked about lately over the last, say, 2 or 3 months as the governor's budget came out and this kind of inequity, if you want to call it, and the formula was raised, this certainly has been a little bit of a push to say, yes, we're not looking for a whole rescale, redo of the formula, but could you at least go in and acknowledge that under the old formula, this provision would have been in there to account more for the inflation rate? Was it intentionally left out? Was it not? I absolutely can see from the legislative perspective needing to have some type of a cap, because if you didn't, they wouldn't have a funding mechanism to fund what they did. But I do also think there needs to be some kind of acknowledgement that if you have the cap, and again, it's at 4.5%, and, you have 2 or 3 years where it's above that, you need to eventually, when it goes under 4.5%, still keep it at 4.5% to over time, kind of build you back up.
Right.
And I'm hoping, that wouldn't be a wholesale change to the formula. That wouldn't require like a whole commission. That could just be hopefully acknowledgement on the legislature's part that intentionally or not intentionally, when they implemented the Student Opportunity Act and tweaked the Chapter 70 formula, that there was hopefully an omission or something that should have been caught that didn't get caught.
All right, thank you. Dennis, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the new 3-year Student Opportunity Act District Plan as presented.
Second.
All right, are there any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in favor, thank you.
Thank you. Next couple of items this evening, I'm going to ask Joanna to begin to review for us. So this is the time of year that we typically get a look at the budget projection. So as the third quarter is coming to a close, we start talking about some of the funds that we're comfortable saying that at the end of the fiscal year, we're going to have a surplus. And we traditionally have taken a multifaceted approach to how to expend some of those funds. First thing that we've done is traditionally asked all of our schools and departments if they have one-time requests for funding, things that they couldn't fund through the local budget that they would like to fund to enhance or augment some of the services that they're providing. These are related to one-time costs, so that they're costs that, would not have a recurring cost in outlier years. So we have that. We'll also eventually, again, we're not recommending spending the complete amount of the projection at this point. We're still working with several schools and departments to refine some of the quotes that were recommended. Over the last couple of years, we also haven't fully expended all of our available funds. We've prepaid tuitions, which basically allows us to carry some money into the following year in case something comes up that we want to target additional funding for. But tonight, Joanna's going to review the very preliminary budget projection, and then the first list of recommended one-time expenditures, again, that have come from schools and departments. We'll review that with you. And ultimately, if you approve that, then there is a list of budget transfers that accompany that. So three kind of reports in a row, but I'll turn it over to Joanna to walk us through that.
Thank you. So the first of the 3 items is the budget projection. So the second page of the memo is a 1-page summary with the DESI categories on the left and what's been budgeted, the $70,700,000. And then there's a column that shows if we're projecting to be lower or higher than the budget in that category. And then where the total of that column is what I want to point out. The projection is that we're going to be 2.866 million under in these DESI categories, primarily we've been talking about these in the quarterly reports. Some of the labor came in under because we hired at less than master's step 3. We have approved unpaid leaves of absence. We also have a couple recent vacancies that we're not going to fill with a full-time person coming in March. It's tough to fill. So that's all incorporated in the adjustment column. So I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has any questions on the 2.8 million.
Just an overall picture, the only item that's a little over is the transportation, that because the homeless transportation is over,
It's homeless, it's foster, and it's special ed.
none of which we can do anything about, so.
No, you can't with homeless and foster, and special ed, with the routes, the way they are, and the times, and the number of students. We're doing the best we can to have an efficient, cost-effective route, and that's the best we can do.
There's truly not a lot of discretion in that, but in that one account that's over.
And the extra funds in tuitions because we prepaid the end of last year for this year.
That's right.
Okay.
You're exactly right. It was about, I had the exact number, I think it's 1.5. And so even though we prepaid, we have had a few, I think Amy Reese does a great job with her budget, but she can't predict every single tuition for every single student, especially a move-in. So with the new move-ins, there are going to be a couple that are higher than what she budgeted for '24.
The other number that's kind of large, but in the other way, is the para line, 2330. And that was, what's the reason for that?
So some of it is, not hiring paras on day one, back in August.
Yeah.
So filling it a little bit later. And then in order to meet the students' needs, sometimes we have to contract with some paras. And a lot of that contract cost is going on the grant. So we are meeting the needs of the students, but it's not all hitting the local budget. But there are still some para vacancies in, of the whatever 171 paras, we're not at the 171.
Not full.
Any other questions?
Okay.
And I would just say, I think this is a conservative number at this point. I'm not concerned that this would be an overreach at this point. So when it comes to the recommendations for spending, we'll still obviously continue to refine that. But I'm very comfortable with this being the minimal that'll be available. Sorry, Donna.
No, I just was going to include an asterisk and mention something that has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about right now.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to say this because I can, it's my last meeting, that when we talk about homeless, we often talk about them like, it seems like an entity, right? And I don't want it to sound to anybody that may be listening that we don't consider them human beings and part of our community and our school district. We refer to it as homeless because we're often talking about transportation or funding or things like this, but, they're very real people to us. And I always cringe a little bit when we say homeless because it doesn't always sound so nice because, they're people who deserve our grace and our compassion. So that's my asterisk for this, so.
No, I don't disagree. I think that from a budgeting standpoint, the difficulty is just the length of stay. Sometimes folks are with us. Obviously, we welcome them into the community,
Absolutely, yeah.
welcome them into the schools. It's just unpredictable. So you may have families that are with us, for multiple years. You might also have families that are just here intermittently, and they've been relocated because they lost housing somewhere else, and then they're ending up going maybe back to that district if something worked out for them.
Right.
So there's just extra costs associated with the grouping. It's just how we also have to just report it from a budgetary
Absolutely.
standpoint. But no, we definitely have, under that category, families in our district that we serve and we consider our families. It's really more from an accounting standpoint that we just use that title.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we had mentioned it maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the meeting, and I was just thinking to myself that, I think,
No, I get you.
I think that they deserve to be recognized as members of our community, so. I'm sorry, Joanne, that was my, little left turn there, so.
Okay, so that's the projection. The next 2 pages are recommended one-time purchases, which total 1.611 million, so not the full 2.8, as the superintendent said. This is sorted by school, and these are meant to be, not baked into our base where we'd have to fund them in fiscal year '25 or forward. That's our definition of one time. And then, so there's a dollar amount, a little description, the school, and then the last 4 columns are to lead into the next segment of the budget transfer of where we'd be favorable. We take funds from the favorable category on the projection, and we'd want to record the expense where they belong in the DESI category for reporting. So any questions on the list of one-time purchases?
Is there any of the capital, I know there's a lot of art.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
There
Capital,
is,
yeah.
just maybe like high level. So again, we do start by asking all the schools and all the departments to give input to this list. And these are things that, again, qualify as like one time, they're not recurring. They're things that have come up oftentimes, like if it's a school type request, it may have come up through staff in the buildings, it may have come up through their school site council as things that they would like to see. Individual departments, have different concerns and areas that they would like to focus on. A couple kind of high-level needs. We always do take a look at the town's capital plan and the school department's contributions to that plan, because each year we're able to accomplish a lot of projects, but we aren't able to always do everything. So like one of the items that we weren't able to accomplish, but it was like next in our list, was the renovation of some of the art classrooms at the high school. That was an area that we couldn't do. So this actually would kind of kickstart some of that work, where even when we presented to the town capital committee, it was a pretty significant number. I want to say it was in the $350,000 range in total. But that was to upgrade the 5 classrooms, including different curriculum materials, even like some computers, things along those lines. But what this would allow us to do is at least go in and foundationally, there's one of the rooms that needs to have like a wall added so that we can better separate the space. This would include new flooring in all the rooms, so there's a consistent floor upgrade. The lighting in the room is still like new LED lights, the drop ceilings in the rooms, a lot of the cosmetic and structural elements. And then we would come back at it again, working with the art teachers to see, now we're getting into furnishings, because that was a bigger cost. Are there some furnishings maybe in a later round that we could add once we have all of the work done? Or if we're not able to do that and we have to go back to town capital next year, we can say, originally this was a 300, I'm just going to say.
475.
It was 475, but we've been able to, on our own, kind of fund these elements of it. So now we're down to this number. This is the new number that we're going to submit. So I definitely like the idea of beginning the kind of foundational work with the art labs. Another big number that's going to jump out to you about midway through the page is almost $500,000. And this tied to some of our discussions previously in an executive session around school security and communications. And so this is the actual cost to install the new two-way radio system within the schools. Again, tied in with the schools, tied in with the police. This would be to move to more of a digital communication system instead of the analog radios that we have. And obviously, that's a big number. So we anticipate that being a significant one-time cost. Yes, you're always going to have to replace like a one-off radio or battery or something like that. but this actually would include the installation of the repeaters, the towers in the schools, so that all the connectivity can happen. You have to do the FCC licensing on the new system, do the full-blown implementation. So that is a big number, but that's why it's kind of a one-time cost. We also, just as an example, like asked our different departments, like our music department, because now obviously, I'm just going to say at the middle school level, 5 and 6 are all together, 7 or 8 are all together. So, do they have all the different equipment that they need to really make their program successful? And each year they try to upgrade some of the musical instruments and things like that. And they're very expensive, musical instruments the kids use. So that's something that we asked and we have included within here. Chelmsford Telemedia is another example, is a very good partner of ours, and they do a lot of work in the PAC at the high school, the Performing Arts Center. But like their light board and even some of their LED, well, they have still the old lights in the theater, and the old light bulbs burn out quite frequently. The LED lights, when you put them in, will last, far past our time, and they don't burn out all the time. So we've included funding in here to be able to change out that old light bulb system to like an LED light bulb system. And for Tom and the kids in the TV production studio to add a new light and sound board. So those are the kind of things that we would have had on the capital project list. But if we can actually accomplish them here, that allows us to then do something else afterward.
Okay, you're also doing a curriculum adoption for world languages. That's new?
Yes, Linda worked with the World Language Department on that. You certainly can address it if you'd like, just to try to have there be some consistency in the program now that, again, all the world languages in 2 schools, it's at McCarthy in the high school. We don't have the 5th, 6th anymore for the time being. So that was something that she worked on.
They have new standards that they have, and they've been implementing it. But when I went through a lot of the stuff that they were doing, especially even through like the NEAS process, they were putting together curriculum units where people were giving the information based on what they were doing. And the need really came out of they actually needed a program to help them go through that, to give those kids that vertical alignment rather than the teachers creating it themselves and using Google Classroom. So I reached out to a few of our vendors, which is actually very difficult to do nowadays. A lot of the vendors have walked away from the world language publications, but we found 2 of them that were able to give us some information, and I've been going through that whole adoption process with the teachers, and after they've had a chance to look at the materials, they'd like to move forward with one of them.
That's interesting. So they're getting away more from that. It's a trend towards another method of?
Yeah, there's a couple of things like, because we have the French and Spanish. The 2 publishers that have the French and the world languages, only one of them has French and Spanish and other languages. That's Wayside Publishing. Very good group. But your bigger groups like McGraw-Hill, Houghton Mifflin didn't even answer me back. So they don't even have it. We have their old materials, and their old materials they're just not republishing. So McGraw-Hill was the second one, and they're only doing Spanish. Interesting trend.
So the world language teachers have already had a chance to look at the options and kind of pick out, like we did with math and.
Right. French didn't have that much of a choice because there's only one publisher that's doing French. But Spanish had 2 options to look at.
Are they using the same publisher? They both?
They would like to use the same publisher. It makes more sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, just from my perspective, this has always been, I think, very well received. We don't typically come back over the course of the school year and recommend a lot of budget adjustments and changes because, we put a plan in effect for the school year. It is aligned with our strategic plan work. And I've always just taken the position, you don't want to go making a lot of changes unless something important emerges that you have to address immediately, because that really alters your base for the following year. I'd much rather have that discussion about where the budget for the following year should go, and then any of the funds that become available, buy some of these things and knock off some of these projects that we just couldn't get done. So really, over the last 5 to 6 years, we've accomplished a lot by doing this strategy and these one-time purchases. The departments and schools very much appreciate it, and we get very good, as you can see, we get very good input from them, and I think it goes a long way.
One last question from me. What was our prepayment on tuitions last year? How much did we prepay?
1.5?
It was $1,523,000.
Okay, thank you.
You sure it wasn't 22?
I was just sitting there going, did she just pull the number out? Like,
Oh, human computer.
And because she's human computer, I've said this before and I want to say it again. I really, really appreciate how thorough all the financial reports always are. And for us to see this line by line where this money is spent is just so helpful as we have oversight of the budget and the finances. To get all this information is really, really helpful. And I very much appreciate it that I don't have to ask a lot of questions because it's always right here.
Thank you. All right, are there any other questions? All right, then with that, Dennis, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the FY 2024 local operating budget transfers totaling $1,611,733 for the Chelmsford Public Schools as presented. This budget transfer is shifting from 12 DESI categories that are favorable to 10 DESI categories where the items should be purchased.
second.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? All right, Dennis?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0 in favor. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to the 8th item on the agenda this evening, this is the personnel report for the month of February. Again, just details a couple of new hires we have, a couple of resignations that we have, and no retirements or assignment changes over the course of this this period. I'll just take a quick note, just notice a lot of people obviously worked with, and I know Bernie Battle, who had been the longtime dean at the high school, and he had stayed on and helped us coordinate our facilities. He has decided to kind of more fully retire from that particular position. We'll still see him around the district, but we were able to hire a new individual, Kelly Hayes, to help us coordinate those activities. So Bernie is still being instrumental in kind of helping Kelly transition on board. But just, in particular, thank Bernie for all of his service to the town. And again, he'll still be around. But Kelly will be starting to coordinate some of that service, which I think is good for the district as well. So she seems very eager to get going on the job, and we look forward to working with her as well.
Are we into the hiring season for next year already, or?
We are well into the hiring season, yes. So one of the things that honestly, and I didn't have this experience when I worked in an urban district, so as much as they get the money late. So you can't really do your budgeting in a city until like later in the springtime. But here, so our advantage is we do the recommended budget in early February, the school committee adopts at the end of February, and then before March 1st, we actually advertise all of the known positions that we have open for next year internally to our staff to see if there's anyone that'd like to transfer around. And then we're also simultaneously posting externally to try to bring in a candidate pool for those jobs. So we're already in the second round of postings for those jobs. And interviews are taking place. People are being offered positions. I'm happy to report back to you maybe towards the give it a month or so, towards the end of April, early May. But we're already well into the hiring season. All of our positions are advertised, again, internally and externally at the same time, which I think is good because, if we don't have internal candidates who are the either interested or really the right fit for the particular position, we're already bringing in people from the outside. I know some of our staff, Diane in HR and Shannon Bischoff last weekend were at a job fair trying to attract some candidates. So they're on the kind of the job fair circuit, talking a little bit about the district. We've got some key positions to fill this year, so I am happy that we're out early doing it. Sometimes we have, and it's hard to find, one clinical psychologist. We actually have 3 this year to fill because of retirement, so that's a big thing for us to be able to do. We have a number of special education positions that we're trying to fill that we just added to the budget. So, oftentimes those are external hires. We've got those advertised. We're starting to interview so that we can really kind of get the cream of the crop and get some people in, while a lot of other districts in our area are still either struggling with budget or trying to get their budgets passed. We're really making a push, even with the different graduate schools in the area, to let them know that we have positions open, we're hiring. We want it to be the first out of the gate, so yeah, it's well underway.
Any other questions or comments? All right.
So again, that's more just free information. There's no necessary vote or anything like that. Next on the item for me is number 9. This is just a school committee policy update that we're recommending. I'm not sure, this would be adopting policy AC. It's a non-discrimination and harassment policy. As you were leaving, or as you were coming in, you may have seen Attorney Joyce leaving. So as you know, we have 2 different legal counsels that help the district. Andy Waugh, who's our primary attorney, general counsel, is through Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane. And then we have Tom Nuttall and Michael Joyce, who are the attorneys through Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce. And they really handle all of our student service type issues in the district. So we actually had Attorney Joyce in doing a training this afternoon for our district administrators around investigations and different school committee policies and discrimination and harassment and whatnot. And in doing in prepping for the training, he always takes a look at our district policies and handbooks, and he noted that some updates needed to be made to the policy AC, the non-discrimination policy. There were certain new classifications of individuals that fall within it. So he sent along a draft for us to look at. We obviously conferred with Andy and Felicia at Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, because they're the ones that typically do the policy reviews for us. And again, where Attorney Joyce and his office are the ones that handle student services, they deferred to Attorney Joyce because he'd be the one representing us. And so you do have the policy before you this evening. It has been reviewed by both councils and is recommended for approval. And again, it ties to the training that the administrators did, because we kind of want to have everyone on the same page when it comes to the policies and procedures. So we'd like to have that be reviewed and approved and then incorporated by practice into our work.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Not with the document itself, but just about, do we have a compliance officer for the non-discrimination policies yet? Or would that be someone who gets hired after this is adopted?
No, so typically that would fall, there are two individuals in the district that most of these fall to. Most of them either fall to Diane Carey at this point, who's our Director of Human Resources. Title IX, different special education procedures would fall to Amy Reese, the Director of Student Support Services. One of the other things that we're trying to get away from is actually naming like individual people in the policies, because when the policy changes, it has to get updated, you have to go in and change the person's name. So, and again, Attorney Joyce recommends you just list the titles of the
Okay.
people as opposed to the individual in the role. But no, that would
You
actually.
know who they are.
Right,
Yeah.
well, you know who the people are, but just in case someone left and then a new person comes, you don't have to go back and redo
Sure.
all your policies. But in that particular case, like discrimination, harassment, things along those lines, would be Diane Carey, our HR director.
Yeah. And the other question I just have, where it talks about the process for, I guess, students and families who might, or even employees who might want to file something, where is that available to people so that they would know how to do that if they needed to?
Sure, so again, this is another recommendation from the attorneys, is that, we have our actual policies that the school committee approves, and then as like a accompanying document, which would be in like student handbooks, in the employee handbook for staff, you would actually have the procedures be a hyperlink. Procedures change more frequently than policies change if there's updates to the law and things along those lines. So he has also provided procedures that tie into the policy, but the procedures aren't approved by school committee. It's the policy that is. So once you were to do this, he would then give us the procedures he recommends. So for parents and staff, it would be included and updated in the student handbooks.
Okay.
And then for personnel, it would be in the staff employee handbook.
Handbooks.
And the procedure links would be right there.
Okay, good, thank
And
you.
I'm happy to email them to you just so you can see them.
I
But they would
know
be
where to look for them, but
hyperlinked
thank
right on the
you.
website.
I just want to make sure anyone who's listening knows that
Yep, no, we would
there's
go
a,
in both
there's
places.
a
but
place for
again, it
them
would
to
be something
find
we
this
wouldn't have to
information should
update.
they need to.
Right, yeah, it would just be someplace we wouldn't have to necessarily update, because again, a procedure can change, but the policy wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know, like, what were the major changes? I didn't have time to look at it, our old policy. What were the major changes between this and what we had before?
Off the top of my head, it's in the first paragraph, there were like certain classifications of individuals that needed to be spelled out. I forget exactly which one, but when it gets into like, race, color, creed, there were different, what's that?
Well, a couple of them I know.
Okay, so there were a couple that just weren't in the policy that had to be added as a protected class under state and federal law. So we have that. And then the other thing that Attorney Joyce did, again, is kind of separate out what's the policy from the procedure. So this is really the policy piece.
Very little else. It's the classifications up there.
Great.
All right, are there any other questions, comments? All right, Dennis, I'll take.
Make a motion to accept the updated policy AC, non-discrimination and harassment as presented.
Second.
Okay, I think I have to do a roll call vote because it's a policy.
Sure.
Yes, okay. So Dennis?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0 in favor.
You just wanted to get another roll call
I did,
in,
I
think.
did. Wait till I bang the gavel at the end, you're gonna love it.
Last item for me this evening is just approval of field trip requests. And just want to note for you, up until this morning, we just had the one on the docket. But then as it came under good news earlier, the Crescendos were invited to New York at the end of the month. I know we have one more school committee meeting later in April, but I just wanted for planning purposes for them to be able to get approval earlier because I do think there's funding involved. So you have 2 trips before you this evening. We'd already had the approval on the agenda, so it was okay to add. But you have 2 field trips. The first is students that would qualify for the DECA International Career Conference, and that is held the last week in April in Garden City, California. And then secondly, as I mentioned, the Crescendos were invited to the ICHSA, which Linda knows the acronym for, finals in New York, again, also that last week in April. So we'd recommend approval of these 2 field trips.
All right, I make a motion to approve the CHS DECA trip to the International Career Development Conference in Garden City, California from April 26th to May 1st, 2024.
Second.
Okay, any questions or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in favor.
I make a motion to approve the CHS Crescendos a cappella group to the ICHSA final in New York, New York from April 26th to April 28th, 2024.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in favor.
And that was the last thing under new business for me.
Thank you very much. All right, do we have any liaison reports?
I do.
Attend the Center School PTO meeting on the 13th of March. And as usual, they had very good attendance, very well organized, tremendous amount of work. And one thing that I always appreciate about the center is the amount of enrichment that they get done throughout a year is pretty incredible. Their fundraiser, one of their primary fundraisers, which is the Taste, did quite well this year once again. They have Recycle Day coming up jointly with McCarthy, and that will be at the beginning of May.
Great, anybody else?
Good.
I am the liaison from the school committee to the town strategic plan steering committee, and we've had quite a few meetings since January. I imagine it's very similar to the process you may have gone through before you chose the DM group, but we've done a lot of meetings just talking about the overall general purpose of what developing a strategic plan is, a lot of work on hammering out what the RFP would look like, and the RFPs did go out, and we now have 7 proposals have been received from 7 different groups that are interested in taking on the work to develop the strategic plan. Tomorrow, I'm going to be reading 7 proposals because on Thursday night, we have the first of our meetings to start selecting which groups we would then like to interview to select someone to then start the big project of how does the town develop this plan. But the committee's great. There's myself, someone from the select board, someone from the planning board, there's a clean energy person, there's a open space people, there's concerned citizens. So it's quite a good cross-section of people from town who are looking at this. And while the school, of course, already has its strategic plans, everything we do has to fit under the umbrella of what the town does. So it's an important part for us to be part of too. So it's moving along. We are going to start choosing someone very soon. I think it's by the end of, there's a date in April, which we will make the selection on who will be given the contract. So it's coming up.
Did they talk at all about how long the process will take once they actually select someone? Like, is there a time frame, like how long the work would take to put it together?
So I don't remember the description in the RFP, but it was pretty detailed in exactly what the group is looking for. I just don't remember that
Well, I was
particular
just
detail.
curious, yeah.
The RFP is pretty specific about a lot of those things.
Thank you for doing that.
It's been very interesting. It's good to talk to that cross-section of people in town.
Thank you.
I've referred them all to look at the school committee strategic plan many times, an example
Excellent.
of what it might look like.
That's great.
Dennis?
As Linda mentioned, CPAC is going to have a virtual meeting tomorrow night. Probably the easiest way to get access, they have a Facebook page. If you just do Chelmsford CPAC, the link is right there, the Zoom link. It's at 7 o'clock tomorrow, and everybody's welcome to attend and learn about what's going on at CPAC and special ed in the district in general, so.
Great. And since our last meeting, I attended the BIAM PTO meeting and the Council of Schools. And I just want to say that the amount of activities that are carried out in all of our schools on a yearly basis by this group of parent volunteers is really quite outstanding. And I know that we're coming up on elections for a lot of these boards, and I would encourage, families or parents to get involved in the PTOs. Even if you don't want to run for an office, I think even just volunteering time on some of these activities that they have planned, it's just a great way to build community. And we had a chance to listen to all of the PTO reports at the Council of Schools. And it was a really good opportunity, as I said, to hear about everything that's going on. It's also a good opportunity for them to ask questions of each other around events, and also just questions around things like transportation and stuff like that. So it was a good meeting. I think they are going to, again, be looking volunteers for their board as well. So I would encourage, as I said, people to consider doing that. It's really a terrific opportunity to help out in the schools and continue the hard work that all of these groups have been doing over the years. Do we have any, I'm sorry, is there any other liaison reports? Okay. Action items. So we have our community forum on Thursday. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so anyone in the community is invited. We did send an email out, and Jenny's been helping us put some social media posts out about Thursday night to come for an information session to talk a little bit about the potential middle school project. We're going to do a timeline of kind of how we got to where we are today, and then what we have to look forward to as we go through this process. I'll talk a little bit about working with the MSBA, what the eligibility period entails, ultimately if we get to feasibility, what that would entail. And again, I think just as an opportunity to kind of provide context for why we're looking at what we're looking at. I do think, I've heard a lot of questions about the project. Even when we had our superintendent coffee, different individuals came to kind of talk about it because they heard about it. So just want to give everyone an opportunity to hear a little bit about what we have coming up on the work. I did email, because we'll have a town meeting article in April to potentially fund the feasibility study. So I emailed each of the town meeting representatives just so that they're aware of it, and I invited them personally to it. Chelmsford Telemedia is going to help us record the session, so it will be recorded. And I think we'll get that obviously posted to our website, but I'll also send a link out to each of the meeting reps, just so everyone, if they're not able to come, and I totally get that schedule-wise, time-wise, but can watch on their own the presentation and at least have the feedback. If you do go to our website, there is a new page dedicated specifically to the Parker Middle School building project, and we've been just uploading all of our documents onto that site, so that'll be another place to kind of host the link to the meeting, and we'll just keep this kind of chronological record of the project. So, no, we're hoping people can come out Thursday night. It's this Thursday, the 28th, at 7 o'clock in the auditorium at McCarthy Middle School. I'll do a presentation, question answer, and again, it'll be recorded for those who can't make it, and we'll get the video pushed out shortly thereafter.
All right, thank you. Do we have anybody for public comment in our second session?
We don't.
I have one other open item, and although you're trying to avoid it as much as you can. So everybody at this table knows that this is Donna's last meeting. She'll be moving on. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank her, not just for her work on the committee, but everything she's done to help me out. People might not know that when I decided to run 7 years ago, Donna foolishly offered to be my campaign manager, but even then, her knowledge about what goes on in the Chelmsford schools and Chelmsford School Committee were invaluable. So Turnabout Fair Play, I kind of convinced her that this was really easy to do and didn't take any time, and so she moved on to the committee herself, and 6 years later, I think she might forgive me, I'm not sure. But honestly, Donna has always been proven to be knowledgeable, insightful, prepared, and above all, thoroughly invested in making sure everybody's voice is heard. I don't think there's a phone call, an email, or text message that Donna received that she didn't respond to. She's truly been like the heart of this committee. I mean, tonight, perfect evidence, even though we refer to homeless because that's how it's in the budget and everything, she's concerned that people feel respected and listened to, and that's just how she is. And that's, like I said, she has really been the heart of this committee in the whole 6 years she's been here. We didn't always agree on things, but we always took the time to discuss things so that we could make the best decisions we could. And although she won't be here physically every other Tuesday, I know that she'll continue to be working in Chelmsford and for the Chelmsford Public Schools, and I know I will really miss her, and I'm sure the rest of the committee feels the same way. So, thank you, Jonna, for everything.
Well, it's certainly been an honor.
Wait a minute, we all get to say
Oh,
something.
no.
Oh, no, we do.
Point of privilege.
Yes, Sean?
You wouldn't say
I mean, I've only been on the committee a year, but you've really, really been helpful to me to learn the ropes when I've had a question about anything that's going on. You've always been available to talk to me, and I just really appreciate your insight and your feedback and how open you've been to just make sure that everything's transparent. We all know how everything works. So I really appreciate your helping to incorporate me into this group and feel very comfortable with what I'm doing here and meant to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Donna. So, honestly, I'm actually quite heartbroken that you're going to be gone. But I understand why you're going to go, and probably why I should stop running for office over and over again. But no, we've been through a lot together. We've been working together for a long time after Dennis brought you in. We've gone through COVID together. We've agreed on a lot of things, disagreed on a few things, have yelled, hugged, cried, did all the things, showed up for each other. And like everybody said, there is always an undercurrent of kindness, right? So you're very accepting and helpful. Even that time I showed up at Lowell High School and said, I don't know anything about Lowell High School. Can you come save me from the parking lot? And you came down from class and saved me. So that's a real Donna, the one that shows up all the time when you need her. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Donna, going back to the beginning, I remember coming out of a meeting that both of us attended at some country club nearby, and you were running for office. And I remember you said to me, I really hope I get in because I really, really want to be a part of Chelmsford School Committee. And I loved that encounter with you thinking, wow, Donna's commitment is deep to this. She really, really wants to do this. And it was just so obvious how much your heart was in it. And having joined the committee about a year later, I realized that wasn't just something you said. It's something you were doing and have done all of these years. You've been totally committed to it. I personally want to thank you on behalf of all of the inhabitants of 19 Parkhurst Road, because I know that my children benefited greatly from all of your service. But in general, to everybody, to all the children of Chelmsford, you have really served us well. And I want to wish you well, because every time somebody gives as much service, the amount that you have, there is always some kind of sacrifice somewhere that you have to make in your own personal life, in your commitment to your family, and to the people that you love dearly. So I appreciate that from you tremendously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I get the last word?
Yeah, that's
Thank
how it
you.
goes.
Well, it was a really interesting 6 years for a variety of different reasons. And, I think about COVID and how we really had to come together and find a way for our district, through that whole process. And it was not easy. And it was actually downright ugly at times. I think, we had some tough decisions to make. The public didn't always necessarily agree. But I do believe that in that moment, what I saw in this committee was what we were really all about. Although we disagreed on some things, we recognized that the decisions that we made, and we've always made, have come from a place that has been in the service of the district. I've never worked on a committee before that has given so selflessly and without ego or without another agenda. It has truly been an honor to work with all of you. It's been an honor to work with all of the parents who also volunteer in our district and the kids. I definitely will miss it. And I look forward to the next chapter for the Chelmsford School Committee because I think you guys are going to do great things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we just have a little token. Give you a token.
You have a token too.
I'm going to bang
We're
you.
gonna get you a new car, but we couldn't afford it. So whatever's in, yeah.
They said you could borrow the bus for a week though.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You get flowers, but I planted this right here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll entertain
As quickly as possible.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a slow motion to adjourn.
I don't know the second part of the, I said second. It doesn't matter.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in
Donna.
favor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Only passed my own joke.